interests, and I respect his independence, but I'd been expecting you to just go along with whatever I decided for the family. Maya felt grateful to Rachel's boyfriend for providing an outside perspective that had helped her sister see the contradiction in her expectations. He said something that really stuck with me, Rachel continued. He said that if I wouldn't treat a friend the way I was treating you, then I needed to examine why I thought family relationships were different. And I realized I don't have any friends who would accept being excluded from decision-making the way I was excluding you. Maya nodded, recognizing the truth in this observation. She maintained friendships based on mutual respect and equal consideration, but she'd been accepting family dynamics that were far less balanced. I think family relationships can be closer and more supportive than friendships, but they shouldn't be less respectful or equitable. Exactly. And Maya, I want you to know that I value your intelligence and creativity. I've just been threatened by them because I thought family planning was my area of expertise, and I didn't want to share that role. Maya felt a deep appreciation for Rachel's honesty about her insecurities and motivations. This level of vulnerability was creating the foundation for a much healthier relationship between them. They spent the rest of lunch making preliminary plans for a collaborative approach to future family trips. Rachel showed Maya the travel research she'd done for this Barbados vacation, explaining her decision-making process and asking for Maya's input on what she might have chosen differently. Maya shared some of the destination research she'd been doing privately for years, showing Rachel websites and travel blogs she'd bookmarked but never had the opportunity to suggest to the family. Maya, this research is incredible, Rachel said, scrolling through Maya's travel notes on her phone. You found amazing experiences that I never would have discovered. Why didn't you ever share these ideas with us? Because whenever I tried to contribute planning ideas, they got dismissed or set aside for next time. After a while, I stopped trying. Rachel looked genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry. I think I was so focused on being the family travel coordinator that I didn't leave room for anyone else's input. After lunch, Maya and Rachel walked along the beach together, continuing their conversation about family dynamics and their individual growth. Maya felt hopeful about the possibility of a more balanced relationship with her sister, one based on mutual respect rather than established roles that no longer served either of them. That evening, the entire family had dinner together for the first time since Maya had arrived in Barbados. But instead of the tense negotiation Maya had expected, the meal felt relaxed and genuinely enjoyable. Her parents asked thoughtful questions about her snorkeling experience, Rachel shared ideas for future travel collaborations, and Tom expressed genuine interest in Maya's thoughts about marine biology education. Maya, I have something I want to share with all of you, her mother said as they finished their main course. Yesterday's conversation made me realize that I've been approaching our family relationships with some assumptions that haven't been fair to anyone, especially to Maya. Maya felt curious about what insights her mother had reached during her own reflection. I've been thinking about why I got so upset when I realized Maya wasn't on the plane with us. And I think it was because I've been using Maya's accommodation and flexibility as evidence that our family is close and harmonious. When she wasn't there, when she made independent choices, it threatened my sense that we're a happy, connected family. After her father left, Maya spent the morning researching marine biology programs in the Pacific Northwest. She discovered that the University of Washington had an excellent marine science department with continuing education courses designed for working professionals. She also found information about citizen science projects that would allow her to contribute to research while exploring her interests. For the first time in years, Maya allowed herself to imagine a future that included passion alongside financial security, curiosity alongside professional success. She didn't need to abandon her consulting career to explore marine biology. She could build a life that included both analytical work and scientific exploration. Around noon, Rachel knocked on Maya's door with an unusual expression of uncertainty. Maya, I was wondering if you wanted to have lunch together, just us. I have some things I want to talk about. Maya agreed, and they walked to one of the resort's beachfront restaurants where they could have a private conversation. Rachel seemed nervous in a way that was uncharacteristic for someone who usually approached family interactions with confident assumptions about how things should go. Maya, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about family planning and decision-making, Rachel began as they settled at a table overlooking the beach. I think I need to apologize for some things I've never examined about how I interact with you. Maya waited, curious about what insights Rachel had reached during her own reflection. I realize that I've been treating you like a personal assistant rather than an equal family member when it comes to vacation planning. I make decisions about what we should do, and then I delegate the logistics to you because you're good at handling details, and you never complain about doing the work. Maya felt validated hearing Rachel articulate a dynamic she'd been experiencing but had never been able to name clearly. "What made you realize that?" Maya asked. "I was thinking about my job, about how frustrated I get when my boss makes decisions without consulting me and then expects me to implement them without having had any input into the planning process. I realized I've been doing exactly that to you for years." Maya was impressed by Rachel's ability to connect her professional experience to family dynamics. It showed a level of self-reflection that Maya hadn't expected from her sister. "Rachel, I appreciate you recognizing that pattern. It has been frustrating to always be the implementer, but never the decision maker. I think I kept you in that role because it was convenient for me, but also because I was insecure about whether my planning decisions were actually good," Rachel admitted. "If you were the one doing the research and making suggestions, I might have to admit that your ideas were better than mine." Maya felt a surge of understanding for her sister's perspective. Rachel's controlling approach to family planning hadn't just been about convenience. It had been about protecting her sense of competence and value within the family system. "Rachel, your planning skills are really good. You're organized and thorough, and you think about practical details that I might miss. But my research skills and creative ideas could complement your organizational abilities instead of threatening them." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to try collaborating on family planning instead of just assigning you tasks. Would you be interested in planning our next family trip together? Like, actually together, sharing the decision-making and research." Maya felt excited about the possibility of equal partnership with Rachel in family coordination. "I would love that, and I promise I won't try to take over or prove that my way is better. I just want to contribute my ideas alongside yours." "We thought you were happy with how we do family trips," Rachel added. "You never complained or seemed dissatisfied." Maya looked at her family and realized they were offering what they considered an apology, an acknowledgement that she had been overlooked. But their framing still put the responsibility on her for not complaining, for not seeming dissatisfied, for not making her feelings more obvious to them. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "In the last 5 family trips we've taken, how many restaurants did I choose? How many activities were selected based on my interests? How many times did someone ask what I wanted to do and then actually plan the trip around my answer?" Her family exchanged glances, and Maya could see them genuinely trying to recall specific instances. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable, which was exactly the point Maya had hoped to make. "I don't think that's entirely fair," Tom said. "We always ask everyone what they want to do." "Do you, though?" Maya asked gently. "Or do you present options that Rachel has already researched, that Dad has already approved, that Mom has already decided fit the budget, and then ask if I'm okay with the plan?" Her mother shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Well, someone has to do the planning, honey.
We can't just show up places without reservations and activities arranged. I'm not suggesting we don't plan, Mom. I'm pointing out that I never get to be the person who does the planning. I never get to research destinations I'm curious about, or book restaurants I want to try, or choose activities that match my interests. Rachel frowned, clearly struggling with this perspective. But Maya, you're so busy with work. We thought we were helping by taking care of the vacation arrangements. Did you ever ask if I wanted that kind of help? Did you ever say, Maya, would you like to choose our next destination? Or what kind of vacation would make you excited? The questions hung in the air, and Maya watched her family realize they had never asked her to take the lead on family vacation planning, had never inquired about her travel dreams, had never considered that she might have destination preferences they'd never heard about. You could have volunteered to plan something, Tom said, but his tone was less certain than before. When? Maya asked. When? When Rachel announces she's found the perfect family resort and starts booking rooms, when Dad says he's been wanting to visit a particular city and begins researching flights, when Mom mentions she saw a travel deal and thinks we should take advantage of it, at what point in any of those scenarios was there space for me to say, actually, I'd like to plan our next trip to somewhere I'm interested in visiting? Her father rubbed his forehead, a gesture Maya recognized from his most difficult work negotiations. Maya, I think we're starting to understand what you're saying, but I have to ask, if you've been unhappy with our family travel arrangements, why didn't you speak up sooner? Why let it build up until you're so frustrated that you're talking about fundamental changes to how our family operates? Maya felt the familiar trap, the assumption that her failure to speak up earlier invalidated her feelings now, that her accommodation had been evidence of satisfaction rather than evidence of resignation. Dad, I've been speaking up my whole life, just quietly. When I suggested that restaurant 2 years ago and you said Dad preferred simple food during holidays, that was me speaking up. When I mentioned I'd like to try scuba diving and Mom said it sounded too dangerous, that was me speaking up. When I asked if we could visit the art museum instead of going to another sports bar and Rachel said we didn't have time, that was me speaking up. Maya could see recognition dawning on her mother's face. Oh, honey, I remember that restaurant conversation, but I didn't realize you were upset when we didn't go there. Because I wasn't allowed to be upset, Mom. If I had pushed back, if I had insisted on my preference, if I had said I was disappointed, what would have happened?
Maya appreciated her mother's honesty about the deeper fears that had driven her reaction to Maya's independence. But I realize now that Maya's accommodation wasn't evidence of happiness. It was evidence that she'd learned to disappear rather than risk creating conflict. And that's not healthy for her or for our family. Her father nodded in agreement. We've all been benefiting from Maya's willingness to absorb inconvenience and compromise her preferences. That's not love. That's taking advantage. Maya felt overwhelmed by her family's recognition and accountability. These conversations were creating the foundation for relationships based on genuine mutual consideration, rather than established patterns of accommodation and assumption. I want all of you to know, Maya said, that I don't regret the years I spent being accommodating. I learned valuable skills about flexibility and compromise that served me well in my professional life. But I do want our family relationships to evolve so that everyone gets to be fully themselves while still being connected to the group. Tom raised his wine glass in a gesture that surprised everyone. To Maya, for teaching us the difference between harmony and dysfunction. As they toasted, Maya felt a profound sense of completion, not because all their family issues had been resolved, but because they had begun the process of honest communication and mutual recognition that would allow their relationships to grow and change. The rest of the vacation unfolded with a new dynamic. Maya continued to plan some independent activities, a sunrise photography workshop, a cooking class focused on Caribbean cuisine, a day trip to explore the island's botanical gardens.
Maya, her mother said quietly, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, for refusing to be taken for granted, for claiming your own life. I just wish it hadn't taken us leaving you at an airport for you to feel like you had permission to do it. Maya felt tears start to flow as she heard her mother's words. Not the conditional approval she'd grown up seeking, but recognition of her courage and autonomy as inherently valuable. Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me. As her family prepared to leave her suite, Maya felt a complex mixture of emotions. Grief for the years she'd spent invisible in her own life, excitement about the possibility of authentic family relationships, and uncertainty about whether they could actually sustain these new patterns when they returned to familiar environments and established routines. But for the first time in her adult life, Maya felt seen by her family. Not just accepted or accommodated, but truly seen as a complete person with her own desires, capabilities, and right to equal consideration in family decisions. I love you all, Maya said as they reached her door, and I'm looking forward to getting to know each other in new ways. After they left, Maya stood on her balcony looking out at the Caribbean Sea, processing the conversation and its implications. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Reyes. How did the family conversation go? Maya called her back, eager to debrief with someone who understood family systems change. Dr. Reyes listened as Maya described the evening's revelations and breakthroughs. Maya, what you accomplished tonight is extraordinary, Dr. Reyes said. You helped your family see dynamics they'd never questioned, and you did that without attacking them or making them defensive. That takes incredible skill and emotional maturity. It felt terrifying, I admitted, but also liberating, like I was finally allowed to be myself instead of constantly managing everyone else's comfort. And that's exactly what healthy family relationships should feel like. Each person gets to be fully themselves while still being connected to the group. You've started a process that could transform your family dynamics for generations. Maya felt the weight and possibility of that statement. She was changing not just her own life, but potentially the way her entire family understood love, support, and individual autonomy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they attempted to put these insights into practice. But tonight, Maya fell asleep in her ocean view suite, feeling proud of the woman who had refused to disappear, who had claimed her own space, who had insisted on being seen. Maya woke up the next morning to a knock on her door at 8 a.m., which surprised her because she hadn't ordered room service or scheduled any activities until the afternoon. Through the peephole, she saw her father standing alone in the hallway, holding 2 coffee cups and looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Dad?" she said, opening the door in her pajamas and robe. "Is everything okay?" "I brought coffee," he said, offering her one of the cups. "I was hoping we could talk. Just the 2 of us. Your mother is still sleeping, and Rachel and Tom are at the gym." Maya invited him onto her balcony, where they sat in comfortable chairs overlooking the morning ocean. Her father had been the most analytical member of the family during last night's conversation, and Maya suspected he'd spent the night processing everything they'd discussed. "Maya, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about family systems and patterns we've never questioned, and I realize I owe you an apology that goes back much further than this vacation." Maya sipped her coffee, perfectly prepared with cream and sugar, exactly how she liked it, which meant her father had been paying attention to details about her preferences even when she thought no one noticed. "What do you mean, Dad?"
Tom cleared his throat, looking more serious than Maya had seen him in years. "Maya, I need to apologize. I called what you're doing acting out and dramatic, but I think I was just uncomfortable because you weren't being the Maya I'm used to." "What Maya are you used to?" Maya asked gently. Tom thought for a moment. "The Maya who says yes to everything, who handles logistics so the rest of us don't have to, who never complains or makes requests that complicate our plans." He paused, looking genuinely remorseful. "That's not a full person, is it? That's just the parts of you that were convenient for us." Maya felt her heart break a little, both for herself and for her brother, who was seeing their family dynamics clearly for the first time. Tom, that's not your fault. I chose to be that person because it felt safer than risking your disapproval or rejection. Rachel had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up with uncharacteristic vulnerability. Maya, I think I've been threatened by the idea of you having strong opinions because it would mean more complexity when I'm planning things. It's easier to just decide what I think will work and have everyone go along with it. Maya looked at her sister with newfound respect for her honesty. Rachel, what if we shared the planning responsibilities? What if sometimes you got to research and organize, and sometimes I did, and sometimes we collaborated on decisions that affected everyone? Would you want to do that? Rachel asked, seeming genuinely surprised that Maya might be interested in taking on planning responsibilities. I would love to do that. I'm actually really good at research and organization. That's literally what I do for work, but I've never been invited to apply those skills to our family experiences. Her mother was nodding thoughtfully. Maya, I realize now that we've been wasting your talents. You help companies solve complex problems and coordinate major projects, but we've never asked for your input on family coordination. Maya felt a surge of validation, hearing her professional skills acknowledged in the context of family dynamics. She'd spent years feeling like her work expertise was somehow separate from her family identity. But her mother was right. She did have valuable skills that had never been utilized in family planning. What happens now? Her father asked. How do we move forward from this conversation? Maya looked around at her family, her mother's tears, her father's thoughtful concern, Rachel's newfound awareness, Tom's genuine remorse, and realized that something fundamental had shifted. They were seeing her differently, but more importantly, she was seeing herself differently. I think we start by acknowledging that changing these patterns is going to be uncomfortable for all of us. I'm going to have to get comfortable expressing preferences, even when they create complications. You're all going to have to get comfortable with me being less accommodating and more assertive about my own needs. And for the rest of this vacation? Her mother asked, hopefully. Maya smiled, feeling genuine affection for her family mixed with determination to maintain her newfound boundaries. For the rest of this vacation, I'm going to keep doing things that interest me. Some of those things I'll do alone. Some I might invite you to join if they seem like something you genuinely enjoy, and some we might plan together if we can find experiences that work for everyone. That sounds reasonable, her father said, though I could see he was still processing the implications of this new dynamic. Dad, it might not always feel reasonable in the moment. I might want to try foods you think are too exotic, or visit places you think are too touristy, or spend money on experiences you think are unnecessary. And I'm going to do those things anyway, because that's what it means to be an individual with my own preferences. Her family sat with this statement, and Maya could see them beginning to understand that supporting her independence would require more than just philosophical agreement. It would require them to be genuinely comfortable with her making choices they wouldn't make themselves.
Whatever what is, Dad? This independence thing. Tom interjected with the dismissive tone he'd perfected in childhood for anything he considered dramatic or attention-seeking. Look, we get it. You're mad that we accidentally left you behind, but acting out by booking expensive rooms and doing solo activities isn't going to change what happened. Maya felt something crystallize inside her, a clarity that came from hearing her family's assumptions stated so plainly. They genuinely believed her independence was petulance. Her choices were acting out. Her desire for autonomy was punishment for their mistake rather than growth toward her own authentic life. I'm not acting out, Tom. I'm acting for myself, maybe for the first time in my adult life. Her mother stepped forward with the expression she'd always used when trying to redirect family conflicts. Sweetheart, of course you should do things for yourself. No one is saying you shouldn't. But family vacations are special because we do things together. We share experiences. We create memories as a group. What if I want to create some memories that are just mine? Maya asked. The question seemed to genuinely confuse her family, as if the concept of wanting individual experiences was inherently selfish or problematic.
Maya could see them exchanging glances, communicating in the wordless way families do when faced with behavior they don't understand. Maya, Rachel said with exaggerated patience, you can have individual experiences anytime. You live alone, you travel for work, you have plenty of opportunities for independence. This is family time. When? Maya asked. When do I have opportunities for the kind of independence I want? When do I get to choose a vacation destination, or try activities that interest me, or eat at restaurants I want to experience? When do my preferences matter as much as everyone else's? Her father looked genuinely puzzled. Your preferences do matter, sweetheart. We always ask what you want to do. No, Dad, you don't. You ask if I'm okay with what you've already decided to do. There's a difference. Maya could see her family struggling to process this distinction, their discomfort growing as they realized she was challenging fundamental assumptions about how their relationships worked. This is ridiculous, Rachel said, her frustration becoming more apparent. Maya, you're being completely dramatic about this. We're a close family, we make decisions together, we consider everyone's needs. If you had strong feelings about vacation plans, you could have spoken up. I did speak up, you just didn't listen because my speaking up wasn't convenient for the plans you'd already made. Tom crossed his arms, adopting the stance he'd used since childhood when he wanted to end discussions that made him uncomfortable. Look, Maya, whatever your issue is, can we deal with it after vacation? We're supposed to be celebrating Mom and Dad's anniversary, not having some kind of family therapy session. Maya felt the familiar pressure to back down, to prioritize family comfort over her own truth, to apologize for creating tension even when she hadn't done anything wrong. But this time, instead of capitulating, she felt a surge of something that might have been anger or might have been freedom. You know what, Tom? I am going to deal with it after vacation. I'm going to deal with it by living my own life instead of constantly adjusting my life to accommodate everyone else's preferences. But I'm also going to deal with it during vacation by continuing to make my own choices about how I spend my time. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, and Maya recognized this as the nuclear option, the emotional appeal that had always been effective in bringing Maya back into line. Honey, you're talking like you don't want to be part of this family anymore, like spending time with us is some kind of burden. Maya thought about the question seriously, allowing herself to consider possibilities she'd never voiced before. Marine biology, definitely. Art, I've always wanted to learn pottery and painting. Travel photography, maybe writing about environmental conservation issues. Her father listened to this list without offering practical objections or concerns about income potential, which felt like a gift of acceptance Maya had never received before. Have you ever thought about taking a sabbatical from consulting? You've built a successful practice. You could probably afford to take time off to explore other interests. Maya stared at her father, wondering if this was the same man who had spent her childhood emphasizing the importance of steady employment and conventional career paths. Dad, a year ago you would have thought taking a sabbatical was financially irresponsible. Her father laughed, a sound with genuine humor rather than the careful diplomacy he usually maintained during family conversations. A year ago, I thought a lot of things that I'm starting to question. Watching you claim your independence this week has made me think about my own life, my own choices. What do you mean? I mean, I've spent 30 years in a job that's secure and well-paying, but hasn't excited me in decades. I've been telling myself that's what responsible adults do. You sacrifice passion for stability. But seeing you light up when you talk about marine biology makes me wonder what I might have sacrificed that I didn't need to. Maya felt a profound shift in her understanding of her father. She'd always seen him as someone who had figured out the right way to live, whose practical approach to life decisions was wisdom she should emulate. Hearing him question his own choices made her realize that everyone was still figuring things out, still capable of growth and change. What would you want to explore, Dad? Photography, actually. I've always been fascinated by landscape photography, but I told myself it was an expensive hobby with no practical value. Maya and I have enough saved for retirement. Maybe it's time to invest in some interests that bring joy rather than just security. Maya felt a surge of affection for her father that was different from the dutiful love she'd maintained throughout her childhood. This was appreciation for him as a complete person, with his own unrealized dreams and evolving understanding of what made life meaningful. Dad, I think you should pursue photography. I think you should buy an expensive camera and take a workshop and plan trips around places you want to photograph. Her father smiled with an expression Maya had rarely seen, genuine excitement about a possibility rather than careful consideration of potential problems. Maybe we could take a photography trip together sometime. Greece has incredible landscapes and ancient architecture that would be amazing to capture. Maya felt her heart swell at the idea of traveling with her father as a companion rather than as a family member whose preferences were automatically deferred to group dynamics. I would love that, Dad. Really love it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching fishing boats move across the horizon and enjoying the warm morning air. Maya realized this was the first conversation she'd ever had with her father where she felt like an equal participant rather than a daughter receiving guidance and expectations. Maya, I want you to know that your mother and I are proud of the woman you've become, not just the accommodating daughter you've been. We're proud of your professional success, your intelligence, your independence. We just haven't been very good at showing you that we value those qualities. Maya felt a healing in her chest that she hadn't realized she needed. Her father's words weren't just an apology. They were recognition of her worth as a complete person rather than just her value as a family member who made everyone else's life easier. Thank you, Dad. That means more to me than you know.
More pressure to return to old patterns, Dr. Reyes said honestly. They may try guilt, they may try logical arguments about family obligations, they may try to dismiss your changes as temporary or problematic. The key is to stay connected to your own truth and remember that you can love your family while also refusing to enable dysfunction. After the call, Maya spent the afternoon reading on her private balcony, enjoying a book about marine ecosystems that she'd downloaded after her morning snorkeling experience. For the first time in years, she read without checking her phone constantly, without worrying about whether she should be doing something more productive, without managing anyone else's schedule or emotional needs. At 4:30, Maya prepared for her sunset sailing trip, choosing a flowing sundress and sandals that made her feel beautiful rather than appropriate. As she walked through the resort lobby toward the marina, she passed her family having an early dinner at one of the restaurants. They looked up as she passed, and Maya smiled and waved, but didn't stop to explain her outfit or destination. The sunset sailing trip was everything Maya had hoped it would be. The boat carried only 12 passengers, and the crew served champagne and fresh seafood while they sailed along the Barbadian coast. Maya found herself in conversation with other travelers. A retired teacher from Australia, a chef from New Orleans who was researching Caribbean cuisine, a photographer documenting climate change effects on Caribbean reefs. As the sun set over the Caribbean Sea, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed impossible to believe, Maya felt something she'd never experienced during a family vacation: pure, uncomplicated joy. She wasn't managing anyone's seasickness or mediating disagreements about photo opportunities or worrying about whether everyone else was having a good time. She was simply present in her own experience, grateful for her own choices, proud of her own courage. When the boat returned to the marina around 8 p.m., Maya's family was waiting for her again. But this time, their energy was different, less confrontational, more uncertain. They looked like people who had spent the afternoon discussing something difficult and hadn't reached any comfortable conclusions.
Maya, her father said as she disembarked, could we talk, all of us, together? Maya looked at her family, her mother's anxious expression, her father's careful diplomatic posture, Rachel and Tom's obvious reluctance to be participating in whatever conversation had been planned. She felt the familiar urge to make this easier for them, to rush to reassure them that everything was fine and she wasn't really changing. Instead, she said, "Of course, Dad, but I'd like to have the conversation somewhere private, not in the middle of the resort." Her mother nodded eagerly. "We could use our suite. It has a big living area where we can all sit comfortably." Maya hesitated, recognizing that agreeing to meet in their space would immediately shift the power dynamic back toward familiar patterns where she was the one being summoned to explain herself rather than being an equal participant in a family discussion. "Actually, let's use mine. It has a balcony where we can talk privately with a nice view." Maya led her family to the Diamond Tower elevators, watching their reactions as they entered the elegant space that represented her independence. Her suite was exactly as she had left it, evidence of her morning snorkeling trip, the marine biology book on the coffee table, the champagne from her sailing trip chilling in an ice bucket. Her family settled into the living area while Maya opened the balcony doors to let in the warm evening breeze. The ocean stretched out before them, illuminated by the resort's subtle lighting and the beginning stars. It was the perfect setting for honest conversation if anyone was prepared to be honest. "Maya," her father began carefully, "we've been talking this afternoon about yesterday and today, and we realize there are some things we need to understand better about how you've been feeling." Maya waited, recognizing this as the opening to what would either be a breakthrough in family communication or another attempt to manage her back into familiar patterns. "We didn't realize that you felt like your opinions didn't matter to us. That was never our intention." Her mother looked genuinely confused. "We would have talked about it, found a compromise." "No," Maya interrupted gently. "You would have worried that I was being difficult. Dad would have gotten stressed about family conflict. Rachel and Tom would have rolled their eyes about me causing drama over a restaurant choice. And I would have ended up apologizing for bringing it up and suggesting we just go to the steakhouse like always." The accuracy of Maya's prediction was written on their faces. They knew she was right because they'd all participated in that exact dynamic countless times, not just around restaurants, but around every family decision where Maya's preferences didn't align with the path of least resistance. "But that's not— we don't try to make you feel like you can't have opinions," Rachel said, though she sounded less convinced than she had earlier. "Maybe not intentionally," Maya agreed, "but the effect is the same. I learned that having opinions that complicated family plans made everyone uncomfortable. So I stopped having them, or I stopped expressing them, or I convinced myself I didn't actually have them." Her father leaned forward, and Maya could see him genuinely trying to understand. "So when you booked this room, when you planned your own activities today, that was you expressing opinions you've been keeping to yourself?" "It was me remembering that I have opinions at all. Maya, this morning, when I went snorkeling, I discovered I love marine biology. I had no idea because I've never been able to choose activities based on my interests. Tonight, when I went sailing, I realized I enjoy meeting new people and having conversations about topics that fascinate me. I've been missing out on discovering who I am because I've been so focused on fitting in to who you need me to be." Maya's mother started crying quietly, the kind of tears that came from genuine remorse rather than emotional manipulation. "Maya, I had no idea you felt so lost in our family. I thought we were close. I thought you enjoyed our traditions." "I do enjoy some of our traditions, Mom. I love spending time with all of you. But I want to enjoy them as myself, not as the version of myself that never disagrees, never wants anything inconvenient, never takes up space that might belong to someone else." Tom, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. Maya, I hear what you're saying, but I still don't understand why you couldn't have just talked to us about this instead of whatever this dramatic gesture is supposed to prove. Maya felt a flash of the old frustration, but this time it was tempered by clarity about what was happening. Tom, this isn't a dramatic gesture. This is me living my life. The drama is coming from the fact that you all can't imagine me having preferences that don't center your comfort. That's not fair, Rachel said defensively. We care about your comfort too. Do you? Maya asked. Because when I was sick yesterday morning and texted that I'd be right back, did anyone check to make sure I was actually on the plane before it took off? When I didn't respond to messages for several hours, did anyone consider that something might actually be wrong? Or did you assume I was being dramatic and would figure it out myself? Her family exchanged those glances again, and Maya realized they were beginning to see the pattern she'd been living with her entire life. The assumption that she would adapt, manage, figure things out, take care of herself so they didn't have to think about taking care of her. We did worry, her mother said weakly. We thought you were probably handling whatever had happened. Because I always do. Because I've trained you to expect that I'll handle things, that I won't be a burden, that I won't create complications for your plans. Her father was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the ocean. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than defensive. Maya, what you're describing, it sounds like we've been taking advantage of your good nature without realizing it. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. This was the first acknowledgement anyone had made that the problem wasn't her failure to communicate, but their failure to see her as a person with independent needs and desires. Maya felt her resolve waver for a moment, seeing her mother's genuine distress. But then she remembered Dr. Reyes's words about family systems and change resistance, Carmen's observations about being taken for granted, the marine biology professor's encouragement to pursue her interests. Mom, I do want to be part of this family, but I want to be part of it as myself, not as the version of myself that never disagrees, never has inconvenient preferences, never takes up space that someone else might want. That's not fair, Rachel said, her voice rising slightly. We don't expect you to be anyone but yourself. Yes, you do, Maya said quietly. You expect me to be the self that always says yes, that always accommodates, that never creates complications for your plans. And I've been that person for so long that I forgot there were other options. Her father tried a different approach, using the gentle but firm tone he'd developed for diffusing workplace conflicts. Maya, I think we're all getting a little heated here. Why don't we take a break from this conversation and just enjoy the rest of today together? We can sort out the deeper issues when we get home. Maya looked at her family, her mother's tears, her father's discomfort, Rachel's frustration, Tom's impatience, and realized that nothing she said would change their perspective in this moment. They were too invested in the current system, too uncomfortable with her independence, too threatened by the implications of her transformation. I have a sunset sailing trip booked for this evening, Maya said calmly. It's adults only, leaves at 5 p.m., returns around 8. You're welcome to book your own activities for tonight, and maybe we can have breakfast together tomorrow. Maya, her mother started. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm just trying to find out who I am when I'm not constantly managing everyone else's feelings and expectations. And I can't do that if I go back to the same patterns we've always had. Maya walked away from her family toward the Diamond Tower elevators, leaving them standing by the marina in various states of confusion and frustration. As the elevator doors closed, she caught a glimpse of them huddled together, probably discussing her behavior and trying to decide how to respond to this unprecedented challenge to their family dynamics. In her suite, Maya ordered lunch from room service and called Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, the family therapist she'd met on the plane. Dr. Reyes had given Maya her card and encouraged her to call if she needed support navigating the family confrontation that was inevitable. Maya, how wonderful to hear from you. How did it go with your family? Maya described the morning's snorkeling adventure and the afternoon's confrontation, detailing her family's assumptions and her own responses. Dr. Reyes listened with the kind of professional attention that helped Maya process her experience more clearly. It sounds like you maintained your boundaries beautifully, Dr. Reyes said. How are you feeling about their reaction? Guilty, Maya admitted. Sad, frustrated, but also proud. I've never stood up for myself like that before. I've never refused to apologize for taking up space. That's all normal feelings when you're changing an entrenched family system. The guilt is especially common because you've been trained to prioritize their emotional comfort over your own growth. But Maya, what you're doing isn't selfish, it's necessary. Dr. Reyes explained more about family systems theory, helping Maya understand that her family's resistance wasn't personal maliciousness, but rather the natural response of a system that had organized itself around her accommodation. They'd guilt their family dynamics on the assumption of Maya's flexibility, and her independence threatened the stability of patterns they'd never had to examine. What should I expect next?
I don't think you meant to take advantage, Maya said carefully, but I think you got comfortable with me being the easy one, the flexible one, the one who didn't create problems. And I got comfortable with being needed in that way, even when it meant disappearing as an individual. Rachel shifted in her chair, looking genuinely uncomfortable for the first time. So what does this mean for our family? Are you saying you don't want to do family trips anymore? I'm saying I want to do family trips where I'm an equal participant in planning them, where my interests matter as much as everyone else's, where I can suggest activities without having to justify why they're worth the group's consideration. And if we can't agree on activities, Tom asked, if your interests don't match what the rest of us want to do? Maya looked at him with something that might have been pity. Then we do what healthy families do, Tom. We compromise. We take turns. We find ways for everyone to have experiences they value. We don't automatically default to what's easiest for the majority. Her mother wiped her eyes and looked directly at Maya. Honey, what would you have chosen for this vacation if you had been the one planning it? The question surprised Maya because it was the first time anyone had asked about her travel preferences without immediately explaining why they wouldn't work. She thought about all the research she'd never been allowed to do, all the destinations she'd bookmarked privately, all the experiences she'd imagined but never voiced. I would have chosen Greece, Maya said without hesitation. I've wanted to visit the Greek islands since I was in college and took an art history class about ancient civilizations. I want to see the archaeological sites, take cooking classes, learn about the local wine regions, maybe take a pottery workshop. Her family listened to this revelation with expressions ranging from surprise to confusion, as if Maya had revealed she'd been secretly fluent in a foreign language they'd never heard her speak. Greece, Rachel said. Maya, you've never mentioned wanting to go to Greece. When would I have mentioned it? When you were researching all-inclusive Caribbean resorts? When Dad was talking about wanting to visit Civil War battlefields? When Mom was explaining why European trips were too complicated for family vacations? Maya could see them realizing that they'd never created space for her to share travel dreams that didn't fit into their established patterns of family vacation planning. We could go to Greece next time, her mother offered tentatively. As a family. Maya smiled sadly, recognizing both the genuine attempt at inclusion and the continued assumption that her preferences were only valid if they could be absorbed into group plans. Maybe, Maya said, but I might also go to Greece on my own first, or with friends who are interested in the same kinds of experiences I want to have there. The point isn't just about the destination, Mom. It's about me being allowed to be the architect of my own experiences. Her father nodded slowly, and Maya could see him processing this conversation through his analytical mind. Maya, I think I'm beginning to understand what you mean about family systems. We've been operating on assumptions about your role that we never questioned because they made things easier for the rest of us. Dad, that's exactly right.
And I enabled those assumptions because I thought being easy was how I earned my place in the family. You don't have to earn your place in this family, her mother said with fierce conviction. You belong here because you're our daughter, not because of how accommodating you are. Maya felt tears prick her eyes for the first time during the conversation. I know that's what you believe, Mom, but our actions tell a different story. When someone's value in a family is primarily about their flexibility and accommodation, it's hard to believe you'd still want them around if they stopped being flexible and accommodating. The words hung heavy in the air, and Maya watched her family grapple with the implications of what she'd said. They were seeing, perhaps for the first time, how their love for her had been entangled with their comfort with her accommodation in ways that had made her feel conditionally valued.
I mean, I think I taught you to be invisible, he said quietly. When you were growing up, I praised you for being easygoing and low maintenance. I made those qualities seem like virtues because they made my life easier as a parent. I didn't have to negotiate with you the way I did with Rachel and Tom. Maya felt a knot in her throat as she recognized the truth in what he was saying. Her father had always celebrated her for being no trouble, for not requiring the kind of parental attention and intervention that her siblings demanded. Dad, you were a good father. You worked hard to provide for us. You showed up to all our events. Maya, I want you to stop doing that, he interrupted gently. I want you to stop protecting my feelings about the ways I failed you. That's exactly the pattern we talked about last night. Maya sat quietly, recognizing that her father was right. Even in a conversation about her own childhood hurt, she was automatically moving to comfort him rather than allowing space for her own experience. Okay, then yes, I think you did teach me to be invisible, but I also think I learned to be invisible because it felt safer than risking your disappointment. Her father nodded, looking out at the ocean. I've been thinking about specific moments, specific times when I chose what was easiest over what was best for you. Do you remember when you wanted to take art classes in high school instead of AP Calculus? Maya remembered clearly. She'd been fascinated by a ceramics course and had wanted to drop her advanced math class to make room in her schedule. Her father had explained that colleges valued academic rigor over creative pursuits, that she needed to think practically about her future. I remember, you said art was a nice hobby, but I needed to focus on building a strong academic foundation. And you never mentioned wanting to take art classes again. You just adapted. You took the calculus, did well, went to college for business because it seemed practical and safe. Maya felt a wave of sadness for her teenage self who had learned that her creative interests were less valuable than her academic achievements, that following her curiosity was less important than meeting external expectations. Do you ever wonder who you might have become if I had encouraged you to follow your interests instead of always steering you toward what seemed safest? Her father asked. The question opened something in Maya that had been carefully sealed for years. Sometimes, yesterday when I was snorkeling and talking to that marine biology professor, I felt more excited about learning than I have since I was a kid. I kept thinking about how different my life might be if someone had encouraged me to pursue science. Maya, you're 28 years old. It's not too late to pursue science or art or anything else that interests you. Maya looked at her father with surprise. Throughout her childhood and young adulthood, he'd been the voice of practical caution, always concerned about security and conventional success. Hearing him encourage her to explore interests that might not lead to financial stability felt revolutionary. Dad, when did you start thinking this way? Last night, listening to you describe your vacation experiences, you lit up when you talked about the reef ecosystem and learning about coral formations. I haven't seen you that animated about anything in years. It made me realize how much passion I might have discouraged in the name of being responsible. Maya felt tears starting to form as she absorbed her father's recognition and regret. This was the conversation she had needed for years, but had never known how to ask for. I don't regret my career, Dad.
I'm good at what I do, and it's given me financial independence and interesting challenges. But I do regret never exploring the things that made me curious. What would you explore now, if you could?
Maya looked up, meeting the eyes of a man in his 40s with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of gentle demeanor that immediately put people at ease. It sounds even more pathetic when a stranger says it. It sounds like a mistake that reveals something deeper, James said, settling into a chair across from her with Patricia's encouraging nod. I'm Dr. James Morrison, and I spend my days helping families understand how they communicate, or fail to communicate. Maya introduced herself, explaining her work as a strategy consultant for tech companies, her success in building client relationships, her ability to coordinate complex projects across multiple time zones. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. She could manage million-dollar deals, but couldn't manage to stay connected with her own family. When did you last feel truly seen by them? James asked gently. The question hit Maya like a physical blow. She sat quietly for a long moment. The sounds of the airport, rolling luggage, departure announcements, children crying, creating a backdrop for her introspection. I can't remember, she finally admitted. I think I've been invisible to them my whole life. Patricia, who had been listening with the wisdom of someone who'd raised 3 children of her own, squeezed Maya's hand. Honey, I've seen a lot of forgotten passengers in my time, but I've never seen someone who looked so beautiful when they talked about their pain. You deserve better than this. Maya's phone buzzed with another text, this one from her sister Rachel. Can't wait to start our spa day tomorrow. Mom already booked us for couples massages, you and her, me and Tom. Dad's going fishing with that charter boat guy. This is going to be perfect. The casual assumption that Maya would be there, combined with the complete ignorance that she wasn't on the plane, sparked something new in Maya's chest. Not just hurt anymore, but a flicker of something that felt dangerously close to rebellion. You know what the worst part is? Maya said, her voice growing stronger. They made all these plans for me, about me, without me. Just like always. They decide where we eat, what we do, when we travel, and I just go along with it. I've been going along with it for so long that I forgot I had a choice. James leaned forward, recognizing the moment when a person stands at the crossroads between accepting their circumstances and changing them. What would choosing differently look like right now? Maya stared at her phone screen, at the picture of the resort with its infinity pool overlooking the Caribbean Sea. She thought about her family settling into their suite, probably already planning tomorrow's activities without wondering where she was. She thought about her comfortable salary, her emergency fund, her accumulated vacation days that she rarely used because family trips were the only travel she ever prioritized. There's another flight to Barbados, Patricia said quietly, having pulled up the schedule on her work computer. Leaves in 3 hours. Different airline, but it gets there tonight. I don't have a reservation anywhere, Maya said automatically, the practical part of her brain engaging. They booked a family suite, 4 beds, shared spaces. I'd need my own room. Patricia's fingers flew across her keyboard. The Coral Reef Paradise has availability. Ocean view suite, private balcony, concierge service included. She paused, then smiled. First-class seats are still available on that flight, too. Maya had never flown first class in her life. Her family always booked economy, split the costs evenly, made decisions based on the lowest common denominator. She'd made compromises on travel, on restaurants, on everything, because it was easier than arguing, easier than standing out, easier than risking their disapproval. How much? She asked, her heart beginning to race. For the flight and 7 nights in an ocean view suite, Patricia calculated quickly, about $4,000 total. They looked completely relaxed and content, having apparently absorbed the shock of her absence and moved on with their vacation plans. Maya felt a complex mixture of relief and hurt.
glad they weren't devastated by her absence, but stung by how easily they'd adjusted to not having her there. Her ocean view suite exceeded every expectation Maya had allowed herself to form. The space was larger than her apartment back in Seattle, with a king-size bed facing floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto a private balcony overlooking the Caribbean Sea. The bathroom featured a jetted tub and separate rainfall shower, both positioned to take advantage of the ocean view. Fresh flowers and a bottle of champagne waited on the dining table with a welcome note from the resort management. Maya stepped onto her private balcony and felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of tension she hadn't realized she was carrying. The view was breathtaking, but more than that, it was entirely hers. No one was commenting on the lighting for photos, no one was suggesting they move to a different spot for a better angle, no one was asking her to take pictures of them against the sunset backdrop. She opened the champagne and poured herself a glass, then settled into one of the comfortable lounge chairs to watch the sun sink toward the horizon. This was what peace felt like, Maya realized, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of choice. The ability to be still without having to manage anyone else's experience of stillness. Her phone had been buzzing intermittently since she'd arrived at the resort, but Maya had been ignoring the notifications. Now, as the sky turned orange and pink above the water, she finally looked at the messages that had accumulated from her family. Her mother's most recent text read, "Maya, we're getting really worried now. It's been 8 hours since we landed and we still haven't heard from you. Please just let us know you're safe. We can figure everything else out later." Rachel had sent a series of increasingly frustrated messages. "Mom is driving us all crazy asking if we've heard from you. Just text back that you're alive so she'll stop obsessing over this. We're trying to enjoy our vacation." Tom's latest contribution was typically practical. "Maya, I looked up flights and there's one tomorrow morning that gets here at 2 p.m. I'll book it for you if you can't handle the arrangements yourself. Just Venmo me back whenever." Maya sipped her champagne and composed her response carefully. "I'm safe and well. Actually, I'm already in Barbados. Got a flight this evening and I'm staying at the same resort. Looking forward to seeing everyone, but I wanted to let you know I'm fine and settled in for the night." She sent the message and then immediately turned her phone to silent, not wanting to deal with the immediate flood of responses she knew would follow. Instead, she ordered room service, lobster thermidor, and a bottle of Sancerre that cost more than her usual weekly grocery budget, and settled in to enjoy her first evening of independent vacation. The knock on her door came exactly 47 minutes after she'd sent the text message. Maya looked through the peephole to see her mother standing in the hallway, still wearing her poolside cover-up and flip-flops, with an expression of concern mixed with confusion that Maya recognized from childhood moments when she'd done something unexpected. Maya opened the door, and her mother immediately pulled her into a hug that felt both genuinely relieved and performatively dramatic. "Oh, honey, thank goodness you're all right. We were so worried. How did you get here? When did you arrive? Why didn't you call us from the airport?" "Come in, Mom," Maya said, stepping back to let her mother enter the suite. She watched her mother's eyes widen as she took in the spacious room, the ocean view, the evidence of expensive room service, the champagne bottle chilling in a silver bucket. "Maya, this room is gorgeous, but sweetie, it must be costing you a fortune. You know you could have just stayed with us in the family suite. We have 2 extra beds, and you know how much my father and I love having all our children close by." Her mother looked confused by this response, as if being different was inherently problematic rather than potentially positive. "What do you mean different?" "I mean, I learned something about myself today. I learned that I can take care of myself, make my own decisions, have my own experiences. And I learned that maybe I've been so focused on fitting into everyone else's plans that I forgot I could make my own." Her mother's discomfort was visible now, the kind of subtle resistance Maya had been managing her entire life without recognizing it as resistance. "But sweetie, you know we always include you in our plans. You're always part of the family decisions." Maya felt a flash of something that might have been anger or might have been clarity. "Mom, when was the last time you asked what I wanted to do on a family trip? When was the last time my preferences influenced where we went or what activities we chose?" "Well,
You've never seemed to have strong opinions about those things. You're always so agreeable about whatever we decide. If you wanted something different, you could have just said so. I did say so. 2 Christmases ago, I suggested that farm-to-table restaurant, remember? You said Dad liked to keep things simple during holidays. Her mother's face showed recognition, then a defensive shift. One restaurant suggestion doesn't mean we don't listen to you, Maya. And you know your father gets anxious about trying new places during family celebrations. What about my anxiety about never getting to try anything new? Maya asked quietly. The question seemed to genuinely surprise her mother, as if it had never occurred to her that Maya might have preferences, disappointments, or frustrations that she'd been keeping to herself for the sake of family harmony. Honey, if you've been unhappy about our family activities, why didn't you ever say anything? We're not mind readers. We thought you enjoyed our traditions. Maya recognized this as the fundamental disconnect, her family's assumption that silence meant contentment, that accommodation meant authentic agreement, that her flexibility was a preference rather than a sacrifice. Explaining this felt like trying to describe water to someone who had never been thirsty. I'm saying something now, Mom. I'm here, in my own room, making my own plans for this vacation. I'm still family, but I'm also an individual with my own interests and desires. Her mother stood up from the bed, smoothing her cover-up with nervous energy. Of course you're an individual, sweetheart. No one is saying you're not. But family means we do things together. We consider each other's needs. We compromise for the good of the group. And what if I don't want to compromise anymore? Maya asked. The question hung between them like a challenge to the fundamental assumptions that had organized their family dynamics for decades. Her mother looked genuinely bewildered, as if Maya had suggested abandoning some natural law rather than simply asserting her own agency. Maya, I think you've had a very stressful day, and maybe you're feeling more emotional about this than you normally would. Why don't you get a good night's sleep? And tomorrow, we can all sit down together and figure out how to make the rest of the vacation work for everyone. Maya recognized this as the dismissal disguised as care, the assumption that her newfound independence was a temporary emotional reaction rather than a deliberate choice. It was exactly the kind of gentle invalidation she'd been accepting her entire life. I'll see you tomorrow, Mom, but I won't be figuring out how to make things work for everyone. I'll be figuring out how to make things work for me. Her mother kissed her forehead with the kind of patronizing affection reserved for children who are having irrational moments. Sleep well, honey. Things will look clearer in the morning. The security line moved quickly, and Maya found herself at gate 23 with an hour to spare. She bought herself a magazine she'd been wanting to read, a coffee that cost more than she'd usually spend, and a neck pillow, because first-class passengers deserved to be comfortable. Each small purchase felt like an act of self-care she'd been denying herself for years. As she settled into a chair near her gate, Maya caught her reflection in the window and barely recognized herself. Same face, same clothes, but something fundamental had shifted. The woman looking back at her had made a choice, taken control, refused to be left behind. But questions remained, swirling in her mind like storm clouds on the horizon. What would happen when she arrived at the resort? How would her family react? And most importantly, would this moment of courage last, or would she slip back into old patterns the moment she saw their familiar faces? Maya's usual morning routine began at 5:47 a.m. with 2 alarms. The first gentle chime to ease her into consciousness, the second more insistent buzz 3 minutes later to ensure she couldn't fall back asleep. She had perfected this system over years of optimizing her life around everyone else's needs, leaving herself exactly enough time to be ready without inconveniencing anyone else's schedule. Her apartment in downtown Seattle reflected the same careful balance between personal taste and practical invisibility. The living room featured neutral beige furniture that could accommodate any guest, artwork that was interesting enough to warrant a glance, but not so bold as to spark strong opinions, and a coffee table perpetually cleared of personal items in case someone stopped by unexpectedly. It was a space designed to make others comfortable at the expense of her own personality. On weekday mornings, Maya would brew coffee in the machine her parents had given her for Christmas,
a mid-range model that was neither too cheap nor too expensive because they'd worried about seeming thoughtless or extravagant. She'd learned to like her coffee black, not because she preferred it that way, but because it was easier than asking for cream and sugar when visiting family or attending work meetings. Over the years, she'd convinced herself she actually enjoyed the bitter taste, the same way she'd convinced herself she enjoyed many compromises that had gradually hollowed out her authentic preferences. Her work wardrobe consisted of carefully selected pieces in navy, gray, and black, colors that commanded respect without threatening anyone's comfort level. Maya had learned early in her consulting career that being memorable for the wrong reasons could derail a project, so she'd cultivated an appearance that was professional and approachable while avoiding anything that might be labeled as too much. Her jewelry was minimal, her makeup subtle, her hair always pulled back in styles that looked polished, but not like she'd spent too much time on herself. The irony wasn't lost on her that she gave million-dollar companies advice on standing out in competitive markets, while she herself had mastered the art of blending in. Her clients paid her premium rates to help them differentiate their brands, to find their unique voice in crowded industries, to take bold positions that would attract their ideal customers. Yet Maya couldn't remember the last time she'd taken a bold position on anything in her personal life. Her relationship with food revealed another layer of this self-erasure. Maya had developed sophisticated tastes through years of client dinners and business travel. But when she was with her family, she automatically deferred to their preferences. If they wanted chain restaurants, she'd smile and order something from the menu, even when she'd been craving the Ethiopian place down the street. If they suggested takeout pizza for the 10th family gathering in a row, she'd nod enthusiastically and never mention her growing collection of unused restaurant recommendations. She kept a private note on her phone titled "Places I Want to Try," a list that had grown to over 40 entries of restaurants, museums, hiking trails, and experiences she'd discovered but never suggested to anyone. It was a catalog of her unexpressed interests, a shadow life of curiosity and desire that she maintained separately from her accommodating public persona. Maya's apartment held evidence of this hidden self in small ways. A yoga mat tucked behind her bedroom door that she used for YouTube videos when she was sure no one would drop by unexpectedly. An easel folded in her closet next to canvases and paints she'd bought during a moment of inspiration, but never used when anyone might see her attempts at art.
To please. But late that night, she'd looked up the restaurant's menu online and imagined what it would have been like to try the duck confit she'd been curious about, to sit at tables that weren't laminated, to have conversations that weren't interrupted by sports broadcasting from multiple TVs. Maya's apartment held small rebellions against this constant accommodation. Her refrigerator contained ingredients for meals her family would consider too exotic or complicated: miso paste, pomegranate molasses, fresh herbs that required more attention than dried alternatives. She cooked elaborate meals for herself on weekends, following recipes from food blogs and cookbooks she'd collected, but never mentioned to anyone who might visit. Her Netflix queue revealed another layer of private interests: documentaries about art restoration, foreign films with subtitles, historical dramas that required attention and patience. When family members asked what she'd been watching, she'd mention reruns of familiar comedies instead, because it was easier than explaining why she'd spent 3 hours learning about Byzantine architecture or following a Swedish detective through 6 episodes of moral ambiguity. The morning routines, the careful wardrobe choices, the accommodating restaurant orders, the hidden interests, all of it formed a pattern of living that Maya had perfected over years of prioritizing harmony over authenticity. She'd become an expert at managing everyone else's comfort while ignoring her own growing sense of disconnection from her own life. Standing in that airport, watching her family's plane taxi away without her, had cracked something open in Maya that she'd been keeping carefully contained. The woman who booked the first-class ticket and ocean view suite wasn't the accommodating daughter and sister her family knew. She was someone who had been waiting, perhaps for years, for permission to exist on her own terms. But old patterns die hard, and even as Maya sat in the airport gate waiting for her flight to Barbados, part of her was already rehearsing explanations for her family. She imagined herself apologizing for causing worry, for not being more careful about her phone, for the misunderstanding that had led to her missing the original flight. She could feel herself preparing to shrink back into familiar roles, to smooth over any discomfort her independent action might cause. The voice in her head sounded like her mother's gentle correction. "Oh, Maya, you didn't need to go to all that trouble. We would have figured something out. You know we always take care of each other." It sounded like her sister's practical concern. First class? Maya, that's so unnecessary. You could have just waited for the next family trip. It sounded like her brother's teasing dismissal. Look at Maya being all fancy and independent. Someone's having a quarter-life crisis. Maya recognized these internal voices because they'd been shaping her decisions for so long that they'd become indistinguishable from her own thoughts. The work of disentangling her authentic desires from her family's expectations, her own preferences from their assumptions about who she should be, felt overwhelming in its complexity. Yet here she was, boarding pass in hand, having made the most spontaneous and self-directed decision of her adult life. The first-class seat wasn't just about comfort. It was about claiming space she'd never allowed herself to take up, both literally and metaphorically. The Ocean View Suite wasn't just about accommodation, it was about privacy, independence, the radical notion that she deserved beautiful experiences even when no one else was choosing them for her. As passengers began boarding the flight to Barbados, Maya felt her phone vibrate with new messages from her family, but she kept it turned off, preserving this bubble of self-determination for as long as possible. She would have to face their questions, their assumptions, their comfortable certainty that they knew what was best for her. But first, she would have 7 days to remember what it felt like to choose her own adventure. The first-class cabin of Flight 447 to Barbados felt like entering a different world, one where Maya's needs mattered without explanation or apology. The flight attendant, a woman named Carmen with a warm Jamaican accent, greeted Maya by name and offered her a choice of champagne, sparkling water, or fresh juice before takeoff. Maya had never been asked what she wanted to drink before being handed what someone else had already decided she should have.
Her snorkeling guide, a local man named Marcus, who had been exploring Barbadian reefs for 30 years, picked her up at the resort's private marina in a small boat equipped for just 4 people. Maya was joined by a honeymooning couple from Canada and a marine biology professor from the UK who was in Barbados for research. The intimate group size meant Maya could ask questions and explore at her own pace instead of being rushed through a schedule designed for the lowest common denominator of interest and ability. "You're going to love the reef we're visiting today," Marcus told Maya as they motored away from the resort. "It's not one of the standard tourist stops because it requires stronger swimming skills, but the coral formations are some of the most pristine on the island." Maya had never been asked about her swimming ability on family trips because decisions were always made based on her parents' comfort level rather than her capabilities. She was actually an excellent swimmer, had been on her high school swim team, but had spent years participating in shallow water activities that accommodated her mother's anxiety about deep water. The reef was a revelation. Maya found herself swimming alongside sea turtles, observing coral formations in colors she'd never imagined, following schools of tropical fish through underwater canyons that felt like exploring an alien world. The marine biology professor, Dr. Sarah Henley, shared fascinating insights about the ecosystem, and Maya discovered she had a genuine passion for understanding the complex relationships between species in the reef environment. "You're a natural at this," Dr. Henley told Maya as they floated on the surface between dives. "Have you considered taking a marine biology course? There are excellent programs in the Pacific Northwest where you live." Maya had never considered studying marine biology because she'd never been encouraged to pursue interests that weren't practical or career-oriented. But floating in the Caribbean Sea, surrounded by life she'd never been able to observe before, she felt a stirring of curiosity that had been dormant for years. When they returned to the resort around 1 p.m., Maya found her family waiting for her at the marina. Her father stood with his hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable in the way he always did when faced with situations that required emotional navigation. Rachel and Tom flanked their mother, presenting a united front that Maya recognized from childhood moments when she'd done something that required family intervention. "There you are," her mother said with a brightness that didn't quite mask her anxiety. "We were wondering where you disappeared to. We thought we could all have lunch together and maybe do some of the resort activities as a family." Maya climbed out of the boat with her snorkeling gear, salt water still dripping from her hair, feeling exhilarated from her morning adventure. The contrast between her family's somewhat tense energy and her own sense of satisfaction was stark. "I was snorkeling," Maya said simply. "It was incredible. I saw sea turtles and nurse sharks and coral formations that were absolutely stunning." "Snorkeling?" Rachel said with a slight frown. "Maya, you know Mom gets nervous about deep water activities. We could have done the glass-bottom boat tour instead, so everyone could enjoy it." There it was, the immediate assumption that Maya's independent choice had been inconsiderate, that she should have prioritized group accessibility over her own interests. Maya felt the familiar pull to apologize, to minimize her experience, to agree that she should have chosen differently. Instead, she said, "The glass-bottom boat tour is still available if you want to do it. I chose snorkeling because I wanted to actually swim in the reef, not just look at it from above." Her father cleared his throat, the way he always did when he was about to deliver what he considered wisdom. "Maya, your mother explained about the misunderstanding yesterday, and we're all sorry about that. But now that we're all here together, maybe we could focus on having a nice family vacation instead of whatever this is."
After her mother left, Maya stood on her balcony watching the last traces of sunset fade into tropical twilight. The conversation had gone exactly as Dr. Reyes had predicted. Her family's immediate attempt to pull her back into familiar patterns, their resistance to her independence, their assumption that her new behavior was temporary and problematic rather than healthy and overdue. But Maya felt something she'd never experienced after a difficult family conversation. She felt proud of herself. She hadn't apologized for her choices, hadn't minimized her feelings, hadn't taken responsibility for managing her mother's discomfort with change. She'd maintained her boundaries even when it created tension, even when it meant disappointing someone she loved. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Mom says you're being weird and dramatic. Can you just come hang out by the pool tomorrow like a normal person? We're supposed to be on vacation." Maya deleted the message without responding and ordered another bottle of champagne from room service. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose herself over familiar patterns of accommodation. But tonight, she would celebrate the woman who had refused to be left behind, who had bought her own ticket to her own life. Maya woke up to the sound of waves rather than alarm clocks for a first time in years. The ocean view from her bed was something she'd never experienced, not because she couldn't afford it, but because she'd never allowed herself to prioritize her own comfort over family budget considerations. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, warming her face as she stretched in the king-sized bed that was entirely her own. Her private snorkeling tour was scheduled for 10 a.m., which gave her time to enjoy the resort's Diamond Tower breakfast service, an exclusive amenity she'd discovered when reading through her welcome packet the night before. The rooftop restaurant served fewer than 20 guests each morning, offering personalized service and unobstructed ocean views that made Maya feel like she was dining on a private yacht. "Good morning, Miss Chen," the server, a young woman named Amara, greeted her with genuine warmth. "I'm excited to tell you about today's special selections. Our chef prepared a traditional Bayesian fish cake Benedict that's been getting rave reviews, and we have fresh passion fruit and mango from local farms." Maya ordered the fish cake Benedict along with fresh coffee from Barbadian beans, allowing herself to enjoy flavors she'd never been able to try because family breakfast decisions always defaulted to familiar options that wouldn't challenge anyone's palate. The food was extraordinary, complex, flavorful, exactly the kind of culinary adventure she'd been craving without realizing it. As she ate, Maya watched other guests in the Diamond Tower section and noticed something interesting. They were mostly couples and individuals who seemed completely comfortable with their own company. No one was checking their phone constantly for family updates. No one was negotiating compromises about timing or activities. No one was managing anyone else's experience but their own. At the table next to her, a woman about her age was reading a book while eating fresh fruit and writing in what appeared to be a travel journal. She looked utterly content with her solitude, occasionally glancing up to admire the view, but never appearing lonely or disconnected.
Maya envied this woman's ease with independence and wondered if she would ever develop that same comfortable relationship with her own company.
There it was, the immediate assumption that Maya's independence was a mistake, an unnecessary expense, a deviation from the family plan that needed to be corrected. Maya had anticipated this reaction, but experiencing it still felt like a small blow to her newfound confidence. I wanted my own space, Mom, and I can afford it. Her mother sat down on the edge of the bed, patting the space beside her in the universal maternal gesture that meant, sit down so we can talk properly. Maya remained standing by the balcony doors, maintaining physical distance that felt symbolic of the emotional distance she was trying to establish. Honey, I need to understand what happened today. We were all together at the gate, and then suddenly you were just gone. Your father thinks you might have gotten confused about the boarding process, but that doesn't sound like you. You're always so organized about travel. Maya took a deep breath, recognizing that this was the moment she could either slip back into familiar patterns of making everyone else comfortable or maintain the independence she'd claimed for herself. I was in the bathroom, Mom. I was sick from breakfast, and I texted both you and Rachel that I'd be right back. But when I came out, you were all gone. The plane was gone. Her mother's face immediately shifted into defensive mode. Oh, sweetheart, we never got any text from you. Are you sure you sent it? Sometimes phones don't work properly in airports with all the interference. Maya pulled out her phone and showed her mother the sent messages, complete with timestamps that proved she'd communicated her whereabouts before the family had boarded. Her mother studied the screen with growing discomfort. Well, we must not have seen these. You know how chaotic boarding can be, and we were all focused on getting our carry-on situated and finding our seats. But honey, why didn't you call us once you realized we'd left? We could have worked something out with the airline. I did call, Mom. It went straight to voicemail because you had already put your phone in airplane mode. You all had. Maya watched her mother process this information, seeing the moment when excuses shifted into guilt and then quickly into the familiar territory of making the situation about her own feelings rather than Maya's experience. Oh God, Maya, I feel terrible about this. What you must have thought of us. But you know we would never intentionally leave you behind. We love you so much, and this whole vacation was supposed to be about family time together. Your father is going to feel awful when he realizes what happened. Where are the others, Mom? Do they know I'm here? They're still down at the pool. I told them I was coming up to check on you and make sure you were really okay. Rachel wanted to come too, but I thought it might be better if I talked to you first, just the two of us. I suspected that Rachel had been more interested in seeing Maya's suite than in providing emotional support, but she didn't say so. Instead, she poured herself another glass of champagne and offered one to her mother, who declined with a slight frown. Honey, are you upset with us? Because if you are, I understand completely, but I hope you know that we can work through this as a family. We always do. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with expectations about Maya's role as the family peacemaker, the one who smoothed over conflicts and absorbed hurt feelings to maintain group harmony. Maya could feel the familiar pull to reassure her mother, to minimize her own feelings, to take responsibility for fixing the emotional disruption her independence had created. I'm not upset, Mom. I'm just different than I was this morning.
Psychology and philosophy stacked on her nightstand that she'd never discussed with family members who preferred lighter conversation topics. Her dating history reflected the same pattern of self-compromise. Maya had a talent for attracting partners who initially appreciated her flexibility and agreeability, then gradually lost respect for her willingness to disappear into their preferences. Her last relationship had ended 8 months earlier, when David, a software engineer she'd been seeing for 2 years, had told her he felt like he was dating a reflection of himself, rather than a real person. You like everything I like.
You want to go everywhere I want to go. You never disagree with anything," he'd said during their breakup conversation in his apartment. "It's not that you're not wonderful, Maya. It's that I don't know who you are, and I don't think you do either." The accusation had stung because it contained enough truth to cut deep. Maya had molded herself into David's ideal girlfriend, the same way she'd molded herself into her family's ideal daughter and sister, her client's ideal consultant, her friend's ideal companion. She'd become so skilled at reading what others wanted from her that she'd lost touch with what she wanted from them, or from life itself. Her professional success had become both a source of pride and a source of confusion. Maya excelled at helping organizations identify their core values, their authentic brand voice, their unique market position. She could walk into a boardroom full of executives and, within hours, help them articulate what made their company different from every competitor. But when it came to her own life, she couldn't name her core values or identify what made her different from anyone else. The work itself energized her. The puzzle-solving aspect of understanding complex systems, the satisfaction of helping teams communicate more effectively, the thrill of presenting strategies that could transform entire business models. Maya had built a reputation for being able to see patterns that others missed, to synthesize information from multiple sources into coherent insights, to ask the questions that revealed hidden assumptions and opened new possibilities. Yet, when she tried to apply these same analytical skills to her own family dynamics, she felt paralyzed. She could clearly see the patterns, her mother's tendency to make decisions for everyone, her sister Rachel's habit of taking credit for group planning while delegating actual work to others, her brother Tom's assumption that his schedule should dictate everyone else's availability. She could identify the dysfunction, but she couldn't imagine how to address it without risking the comfortable predictability of being accepted and included. Maya's relationship with her family had calcified around these roles years earlier. She was the peacemaker, the flexible one, the sister who could be counted on to go along with plans even when they didn't work well for her schedule. Her parents praised her for being easygoing and low maintenance, qualities that she'd learned to value about herself, even as they sometimes felt more like character flaws than virtues. Family holidays followed the same patterns year after year. Rachel would announce what she wanted to do. Tom would negotiate modifications based on his preferences. Their parents would express opinions that somehow aligned with whatever Rachel and Tom had decided, and Maya would smile and say, "That sounds perfect." Her contributions to the planning were typically logistical, booking restaurants, coordinating transportation, managing details that others didn't want to handle, while the actual decisions about activities, timing, and priorities were made by others. She'd tried, occasionally, to express preferences that differed from the group decision. 2 Christmases ago, she'd suggested they try a new restaurant instead of their traditional steakhouse, mentioning a farm-to-table place that had gotten excellent reviews. Her mother had wrinkled her nose and said, "Oh, honey, you know your father likes to keep things simple during the holidays. Maybe we could try your place for someone's birthday instead." The suggestion had been gently deflected, and Maya had never brought it up again. The birthday in question had come and gone without anyone remembering her restaurant suggestion, which Maya told herself was fine because she didn't want to seem pushy or difficult.
"First time in Barbados?" Winston asked as they drove through Bridgetown, past colorful colonial buildings and bustling markets that Maya's family would have dismissed as too touristy or too complicated to navigate. "Yes, but not the way I planned," Maya replied, finding herself telling Winston the abbreviated version of her story. His laughter filled the car when she described booking first class after being left at the airport. "That's the best revenge, showing up looking better than the people who wronged you," Winston said with obvious approval. "You staying at Coral Reef? That's a beautiful resort, very romantic. You meeting someone there?" "Just my family," Maya said, then corrected herself. "Actually, no, I'm not meeting them. I'm going to the same place they are, but I'm having my own vacation." Winston glanced at her in the rearview mirror with newfound respect. "Now that's what I call independence.
Good for you, miss. Life's too short to let other people control your happiness. As they approached the resort, Maya could see the infinity pool and ocean view terraces that had been featured in all the promotional photos her family had shared. But instead of feeling the familiar anxiety about fitting into group dynamics and managing others' expectations, she felt a flutter of excitement about discovering this place on her own terms. The lobby of the Coral Reef Paradise Resort was exactly as luxurious as advertised. White marble floors, soaring ceilings with natural wood beams, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Caribbean Sea. Maya approached the check-in desk with her reservation confirmation, acutely aware that she was about to encounter her family's surprise much sooner than expected. "Welcome to Coral Reef Paradise, Ms. Chen," the desk clerk, a professional woman named Kendra, said warmly. "I see you have one of our ocean view suites. You're going to love the private balcony. It has the best sunset view on the property." As Kendra processed Maya's check-in, she mentioned casually, "I believe we have other guests with your last name already staying with us. The Chen family checked in this afternoon. Are you joining them?" Maya's heart rate accelerated, but managed to keep her voice steady. "We're here at the same time, but I have my own room. We're doing some individual activities as well as family time." Kendra's professional smile never wavered, but Maya caught a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Working at a luxury resort, Kendra had undoubtedly seen every variation of family dynamics and vacation drama. "Of course. Your suite is in the Diamond Tower, 7th floor. Would you like me to call and let the other Chen party know you've arrived?" "Not just yet. I'd like to get settled first, maybe explore a bit on my own. I'll connect with them later this evening." Kendra handed Maya an elegant keycard and a welcome packet. "Your suite includes concierge service, 24-hour room service, and access to all resort amenities. The Diamond Tower has its own private pool area if you prefer a quieter experience than the main pool complex. Is there anything specific you'd like to arrange for your stay?" Maya looked through the activities brochure, seeing dozens of experiences she'd never been able to choose because family trips always defaulted to the most accessible, least challenging options. "Actually, yes. I'd like to book a private snorkeling tour for tomorrow morning and maybe a sunset sailing trip for tomorrow evening." "Excellent choices," Kendra said, making notes on her computer. "Both of those are adult-only experiences, very popular with our independent travelers. I'll have our activities coordinator reach out to your room with details." As Maya made her way to the elevator, she passed the main pool area and caught sight of familiar figures lounging by the water. Her family had claimed a cluster of chairs near the swim-up bar, with their usual collection of books, sunscreen, and poolside snacks spread across multiple tables. Her mother was reading a romance novel under an umbrella, her father was dozing in the sun, and Rachel and Tom were in the pool, engaged in some kind of competitive game that involved splashing and loud laughter.
"Champagne, please," Maya said, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. She rarely drank alcohol around her family because her mother worried about calories and her father made jokes about fancy drinks for fancy people. But here, 30,000 feet above her old life, Maya accepted the glass of Dom Perignon and allowed herself to savor the way the bubbles felt against her tongue. The seat itself was a revelation. Leather that had been designed for her comfort rather than efficiency, with enough space to stretch out completely and a privacy screen she could raise whenever she wanted to be alone with her thoughts. Maya had spent so many flights squeezed into middle seats between family members who used her as a buffer for their own discomfort, serving as a translator when her parents couldn't understand airline announcements, or sharing her snacks when others had forgotten to pack enough food. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Maya finally turned on her phone to discover 17 missed messages and 6 voicemails from her family. The progression of communications told a story of growing alarm mixed with familiar patterns of blame and self-centeredness that she recognized, but had never been able to see so clearly from a distance. Her mother's first message, sent 20 minutes after their plane had taken off, read, "Honey, I just realized we didn't see you board. Are you in a different section? Text me back so I don't worry."
The tone was concerned, but still assumed Maya was somewhere on the plane, somewhere accessible, somewhere within the orbit of family management. Rachel's messages revealed a different kind of panic. Maya, where are you? Mom is freaking out, and now she's making the flight attendants look for you. This is so embarrassing. Call me immediately. Even in crisis, Rachel's primary concern was her own discomfort with the situation rather than Maya's well-being. Tom's contribution was characteristically practical and dismissive. Maya, whatever happened, just fix it. We're already in the air and can't do anything from here. Figure out how to get to Barbados and meet us at the hotel. We'll reimburse you for the extra flight costs. The voicemails painted an even clearer picture of family dynamics Maya had never been able to see from the inside. Her mother's voice progressed from worried to angry across 3 separate messages, each one revealing different layers of assumption about Maya's role in the family ecosystem. Maya, sweetheart, I don't understand what happened. We were all together at the gate, and then when we got on the plane, you weren't there. Your father thinks you must have misunderstood the boarding call, but I know you're always so responsible about these things. Please call me as soon as you get this. We're worried sick, and I can't enjoy the vacation knowing you're stuck somewhere. The second voicemail showed irritation creeping into the worry. Maya, it's Mom again. We've landed in Barbados and still haven't heard from you. This is completely unlike you to not respond to messages. I hope you're not being dramatic about something. You know how much this trip means to your father and me. Just call me back and let me know you're working on getting here. The third voicemail revealed the guilt and self-justification Maya had been managing her entire life. Honey, I've been thinking about what happened, and I realize we should have done a head count before boarding. But you know how chaotic airports are, and we all assumed you were right behind us like always. You're usually so good about keeping up with the group. I hope you're not upset with us because this really wasn't anyone's fault. These things happen. Maya listened to these messages while sipping her champagne and watching clouds drift past her window. And for the first time in her adult life, she could hear her family's dysfunction with the clarity of distance. Her mother's inability to take responsibility, Rachel's self-centered panic, Tom's assumption that Maya would handle the inconvenience. It was all so familiar that she'd never questioned whether it was normal or healthy. The flight attendant, Carmen, noticed Maya's expression as she listened to the voicemails. Everything all right, love? You look like you're processing some heavy news. Maya hesitated, then found herself telling Carmen the entire story. The missed flight, the family who hadn't noticed she was missing, the impulsive decision to book first class and follow them anyway. Carmen listened with the kind of attention Maya rarely received from people who were supposed to know her best.
The boarding announcement echoed through Terminal B like a death knell, and Maya Chen stood frozen at Gate 47, watching her family's flight taxi away from the jet bridge. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Safe travels, honey. See you at the resort." The irony tasted bitter on her tongue. She wasn't on that plane. She was standing here, abandoned, with nothing but her carry-on bag and the growing realization that her own family had forgotten her existence. The gate agent, a woman with kind eyes named Patricia, whose badge caught the fluorescent light, noticed Maya's distress immediately. "Miss, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya's laugh came out hollow, echoing off the empty chairs that had been filled with travelers just minutes before. "I think I am the ghost. My family just left without me." The words felt surreal as they left her lips, like she was describing someone else's nightmare. The terminal's air conditioning hummed overhead, mixing with the distant sound of jets taking off, creating a symphony of departure that she wasn't part of. "Oh, honey," Patricia said, her voice softening with genuine concern. She'd been working at this airport for 15 years and had seen every kind of travel disaster, but something about this young woman's quiet devastation struck her differently. "What happened? Did you miss boarding?" Maya sank into one of the plastic chairs, her designer purse, a gift from her successful consulting career, feeling heavier than it should. "I was in the bathroom. Food poisoning from breakfast, I think. I texted my mom and sister that I'd be right back, but when I came out," she gestured helplessly at the empty gate, "they were gone. The plane was gone. Apparently, they thought I was already on board."
The story unfolded in fragments as Patricia sat beside her, abandoning her post duties for a moment of human connection. Maya's family had planned this Caribbean vacation for months, her parents' 30th anniversary celebration. Her sister Rachel had handled all the bookings, her brother Tom had coordinated schedules, and Maya, as always, had simply followed along. She was the middle child, the one who bent to everyone else's plans, who made her life fit around their expectations. "Did you call them?" Patricia asked, though she could see Maya clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Straight to voicemail. They always put their phones on airplane mode the second they step on a plane. They won't even know I'm missing until they land in 4 hours." Maya's voice cracked slightly, betraying the careful composure she'd maintained for 28 years of being overlooked, underestimated, and taken for granted. Patricia studied this young woman, designer jeans, expensive watch, manicured nails, but eyes that held a lifetime of being invisible in her own family. What resort are they going to? The Coral Reef Paradise in Barbados. It's all-inclusive, oceanfront suites, the works. We've been planning it since last Christmas. Maya pulled up the reservation on her phone, showing Patricia the pristine white beaches and crystal-clear water that now felt like they belonged to someone else's life. That's when James Morrison appeared, rolling his carry-on behind him with the confident stride of someone who traveled frequently. He was heading to Gate 49 for a delayed flight to Miami, but Maya's conversation with Patricia had caught his attention. As a therapist who specialized in family dynamics, he recognized the particular kind of pain in Maya's voice, the hurt of being forgotten by the people who should know you best. "Excuse me," James said, approaching carefully. "I couldn't help but overhear. Your family left you?"
So let me understand this, Carmen said, settling into the empty seat beside Maya with the easy familiarity of someone who'd heard thousands of passenger stories over the years. Your family went on a vacation without you, didn't notice you were missing until they were already in the air, and now they're upset that you're not responding fast enough to fix their mistake? Hearing it summarized so plainly made Maya laugh, a sound that surprised her with its bitterness. When you put it like that, it sounds completely dysfunctional. Honey, it doesn't just sound dysfunctional, it is dysfunctional. I've got 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and if one of us went missing during a family trip, the rest wouldn't rest until we found them. We certainly wouldn't be sending messages about being embarrassed or telling them to figure it out on their own. Carmen poured Maya another glass of champagne and shared stories from her own large Jamaican family. Chaotic and loud, but fiercely protective of each member. She described family trips where they'd delay flights to search for missing members, where everyone took responsibility for everyone else's well-being, where being family meant nobody got left behind. Ever. "The thing that strikes me most about your story," Carmen said thoughtfully, "is that you're surprised by their reaction. Like some part of you expected them to not notice you were gone." Maya felt tears prick her eyes as she realized Carmen was right. Part of her had always expected to be overlooked, forgotten, treated as optional. She'd built her entire identity around being low maintenance and flexible because some deep part of her believed that was the only way to ensure she wouldn't be abandoned entirely. "What are you going to do when you land?" Carmen asked gently. "I honestly don't know. I've never done anything like this before. I've never made a decision this big without consulting everyone else first." "Maybe that's exactly why you need to do it," Carmen suggested. "Sometimes the people who love us get comfortable taking us for granted because we've trained them to expect that we'll always be there, always accommodating, always putting their needs first. Maybe showing up independently will remind them that you have your own agency." As the flight continued, Maya found herself in conversation with other first-class passengers who were drawn into her story. There was Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, a family therapist heading to a conference in Barbados, who validated Carmen's observations about family systems and boundary setting. There was Marcus Thompson, a successful entrepreneur, who shared his own story of breaking free from family expectations that had limited his potential. The hardest part isn't making the decision to change. It's maintaining that change when the people around you resist it. Your family has gotten comfortable with you being predictable and accommodating. When you show up acting independently,
they're going to push back because it threatens the stability of the system they've created. Maya absorbed this wisdom while enjoying a meal that had been prepared specifically for her preferences, rather than compromise to accommodate a group's lowest common denominator. The conversation flowed naturally from topic to topic: travel experiences, career challenges, family dynamics, personal growth, in a way that felt both stimulating and relaxing. Dr. Reyes shared insights about family roles and how they become entrenched over time. You've been cast as the accommodating one, the peacemaker, the person who bends so others don't have to. That role served a purpose when you were younger, but now it's limiting your growth and preventing your family from developing healthier communication patterns. What do you mean? Maya asked, genuinely curious about this perspective on dynamics she'd never questioned. Well, think about it. If you're always the one who compromises, who keeps peace, who manages logistics while others make decisions, what does that enable in the rest of your family? Your mother doesn't have to consider how her decisions affect you because you'll adapt. Your siblings don't have to be more thoughtful about planning because you'll handle whatever they don't want to deal with.
$4,000? Maya made that in a week and a half. She had savings that she'd been accumulating for years without any clear purpose, just the vague notion that she should be responsible and prepared. She'd never spent that much money on herself at once for anything purely for her own enjoyment. James watched the internal struggle play out across Maya's face. What scares you more, the money or showing up without them knowing you're coming? Showing up, Maya admitted immediately. They'll want to know why I didn't just wait for the next family trip. They'll make it about their guilt, their mistake, and somehow I'll end up apologizing for making them feel bad. Or, Patricia said gently, they might realize they've been taking you for granted. Maya's phone rang, her mother calling from the plane's Wi-Fi. Maya stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the answer button. Then, for the first time in her adult life, she let it go to voicemail. A small act of not immediately responding to her mother's call felt revolutionary. Maya had spent 28 years being available, being accommodating, being the easy child who never caused problems. She'd built her identity around being low maintenance, flexible, understanding. I want to book it, Maya said suddenly, the words surprising her as much as they surprised Patricia and James. The first-class flight, the suite, all of it. I want to show up on my own terms. Patricia began typing immediately, as if she was afraid Maya might change her mind. I'll need your credit card and ID. The flight board's in 2.5 hours, which gives us plenty of time to get you checked in and through security. As Maya handed over her documents, James pulled out one of his business cards. I meant what I said about family dynamics. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling dysfunction. Your family has gotten comfortable with overlooking you because you've never made it uncomfortable for them to do so. Maya studied the card, Dr. James Morrison, Family Systems Therapy, and slipped it into her wallet. What if they're angry that I'm there? What if they're not? James countered. What if this is the wake-up call they need? What if you showing up independently, taking care of yourself, enjoying your vacation whether they include you or not, is exactly what changes the whole dynamic? Patricia printed out Maya's boarding pass and hotel confirmation, the physical documents making the decision feel real and irreversible. Gate 23, she said with a smile, boards at 6:15. And honey, I've been working in this airport for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone look as beautiful as you do right now. That's the glow of someone who just chose themselves. Maya hugged Patricia impulsively, the stranger who had shown her more care in the past hour than her family had in months. Thank you, both of you. I don't know what I would have done without— You would have figured it out, James interrupted gently. That's what strong people do. They figure it out. The only difference is now you're choosing to figure it out on your own terms instead of everyone else's. As Maya walked through security, her carry-on rolling behind her and her first-class boarding pass in her hand, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. Not anxiety about pleasing others, not worry about fitting in,
but genuine excitement about what might happen next. Her phone buzzed with a voicemail notification from her mother, but Maya didn't listen to it. Instead, she turned off her phone completely and dropped it into her purse. For the next few hours, she would be unreachable, unavailable, and entirely focused on herself.
Marcus added his own perspective. In business, we'd call you an enabler of dysfunction. Not maliciously, but by absorbing the consequences of everyone else's poor planning and inconsiderate behavior, you've made it possible for them to continue those patterns without experiencing natural consequences. The insights were hitting Maya with the force of revelation. She'd spent years thinking she was being helpful, being a good daughter and sister, being the kind of person others could rely on. But she'd never considered that her reliability might actually be preventing her family from developing their own responsibility and consideration for others. "So what happens when I show up at the resort?" Maya asked. "What should I expect?" Dr. Reyes smiled knowingly. "Expect them to try to pull you back into old patterns immediately. They'll probably be relieved you're safe, grateful that you figured it out, and ready to absorb you back into the group dynamic as if nothing has changed. The real test will be whether you maintain the independence you've claimed for yourself." "How do I do that without creating a massive family drama?" Maya asked, voicing her deepest fear about the situation. "You can't," Dr. Reyes said gently. "That's the paradox of changing family systems. The very act of refusing to enable dysfunction creates conflict, because it forces everyone else to confront behaviors they've been able to avoid examining. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life invisible in your own family." As the plane began its descent into Barbados, Maya felt a mixture of anticipation and terror building in her chest. The island spread out below them, a jewel of blue water and white beaches that looked exactly like the photos her family had been sharing for months. But Maya would be experiencing it differently than they were. Not as part of a group that had absorbed her preferences into collective decisions, but as an individual with her own suite, her own schedule, her own choices to make. Carmen stopped by Maya's seat one final time before landing. "Remember, love, you've already proven you can take care of yourself. You found your own flight, booked your own accommodation, made your own way here. Whatever happens next, you've already shown yourself that you're capable of independence." Maya thanked Carmen, Dr. Reyes, and Marcus, collecting their business cards and promising to update them on how the vacation unfolded. As passengers began preparing for landing, Maya realized she had formed more meaningful connections during this 6-hour flight than she had during most family gatherings that lasted entire weekends. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. If she could connect this easily with strangers when she was being authentically herself, what did that say about her relationships with people who were supposed to know her best? And what would it mean for those relationships if she continued being this authentic, independent version of herself instead of reverting to familiar patterns of accommodation? As the plane touched down in Barbados, Maya's phone immediately began buzzing with new messages from her family. But this time, instead of frantically checking each notification, she deliberately kept her phone in airplane mode for a few minutes longer. She wanted to savor this moment of transition, this threshold between who she'd been and who she might become. The warm Caribbean air hit her face as she exited the plane, carrying the scent of hibiscus and saltwater that promised adventure she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Maya walked through the airport with the confidence of someone who had chosen her own destination, her own timeline, her own terms of arrival. The taxi ride to the Coral Reef Paradise Resort gave Maya her first glimpse of Barbados through independent eyes. Instead of being squeezed into a group shuttle where her window view might be blocked by family members taking photos, she sat in the front passenger seat of a pristine Mercedes taxi driven by a local man named Winston, who proved to be a wealth of information about island culture, hidden restaurants, and off-the-beaten-path experiences.